Welcome, everyone, to the C-Suite Marketing Perspectives podcast. I'm Steve McDonald, your host. And today we've got multiple-time CMO Marina Devalia. And Marina, you're right now at Vantaca as a CMO, but you also have your own company, Playbook Labs. And you work with companies and you've worked with as a CMO and through Playbook Labs in terms of aligning sales and marketing, very critical focus on generating revenue out of marketing, right? Very focused on the pipeline development and revenue focused. And we're going to be talking about how do we do that today, but how do we do that with thought leadership? And what's the sales enablement machine that we can create through thought leadership? So with that, maybe give us a little bit more background about what you're doing now, and then we'll jump into the thought leadership sales subject matter.
Absolutely. And thank you for the opportunity. I'm really grateful to be here. Can't wait for this amazing conversation. But yes, I joined Vantaca about a couple months ago. And for a variety of different reasons, it's a great team, it's a great product and a great market. I'm enjoying it thus far. Prior to that, I did work independently through Playbook Lab, a consultancy that I found about a year ago, and had a luxury of working with great SaaS companies and introducing them to sales-aligned marketing, building sales-aligned marketing engines. Prior to that, I led marketing other Washington, D.C.-based SaaS companies. But why I went independent initially is I just really wanted to spread this knowledge and frameworks that I learned over time that I really loved implementing over and over again and tweaking as I uncover business specifics around specific problems. But for now, Vantaca is home and it's been great. I potentially can go back to Playbook Lab eventually. That is still my baby. And I love doing what I do here right now with you. But yes, I love aligning sales and marketing teams. That has been my passion in the career choices I made some time ago, and building very revenue-centric marketing operations.
Well, I know in our past conversations, we've talked a lot about, in order to create success, we started talking about the evolution of marketing and actually marketing evolving to the point where we've got a real seat at the table in terms of leadership inside of an organization. Tell me a little bit about that and how you achieve that kind of strategic alignment within the C-suite to start with, and that seat at the table for marketing.
Yes, it's not an easy path, that's for sure, especially for folks that kind of came out of demand generation or product marketing, which is the more traditional paths to the role of a CMO, where sometimes we're so execution focused and focused on let's push out this campaign, let's get more leads, and it's a numbers game in a way, right? We're going through this motion. I think successful CMOs get more authoritative and stronger seat at the table and more visible seat at the table when they have a direct connection and correlation between pipeline and revenue and the activity that they're executing on day to day. So what helped me as a marketer is leading every conversation with what's the goal of this? What are we trying to get out of this? Content is a great example of it. Producing more content, creating more programmatic campaigns around webinars and ebooks and blogs is great. What is the outcome we are seeking that it has a numerical value at the end of the day, right? Is it a branding initiative? Okay, great. But how do you measure its success? And the only metrics that day in and day out, the executive leadership team cares about is how much revenue you're bringing to the table. And if you structure your daily operations around content, your product marketing, or just general demand generation around pipeline creation and that bottom line, you'll be fine. You will have the strong authority, the stronger voice at the table, and you can lead with that and you can prioritize where the company is going. So everybody has 100 different priorities that they need to get to and get accomplished to and resource on any given quarter, I'd say. And a lot of times marketers just are like that catch-all bucket of execution. I was like, let's go do it. Work cross-functionally. Good luck. And the more you can prove that you are strategic about how you approach your day-to-day and how your marketing team is run, then the stronger voice you have in prioritizing those activities and saying, no, we can table that, or let's focus on this versus the other.
And you made a point of saying marketers need to be more brave. What did you mean by that?
Exactly that. Marketers are so used to just saying, Okay, let's see. Do I have a budget for this? I don't have a budget for this. Okay, I'll figure it out when they say, when executive team or the board comes back with, okay, we can do 40% to pipeline attribution for marketing next year versus 40 or versus 35. And we say, all right, let's do that. Like that's the goal. Let's go get it.
Yeah.
We need to be more informed and therefore braver to talk about what that means. What does that mean in terms of the budget? What does that mean in terms of resourcing? And know those numbers and know those correlation points by heart. And that's what would allow us to lead with braveness and authority and having the seat at the table that, again, you can prove to be strategic versus an order taking kind of function where you just in a constant execution mode and you're basically operating an internal agency.
And we all, so as CMOs, we all want to be strategic. We all want to be more focused on revenue. We all want to be very data driven. But I think Gartner said it in the last year here that chief marketing officers need to be more like chief customer officers, because that voice at the table, the voice of highest authority in any company is the customer. And sales can get very close to the customer, but having sales conversations isn't understanding the customer in total, right? And marketing has the opportunity to come and represent the customer, be the voice of the customer, and how that gets then translated across all the different departments. Having the braveness, the assertiveness, this, it gives you that. If we can say, here's one of the things we're talking about, strategic initiatives. Here's one of the things that I know we're not doing well that our customers really need, right? That's going to give you not only credibility and respect, but authority. So that has to get translated. And I think that's like a good segue into the main subject matter here of how thought leadership that we produce, how that aligns the company, but also aligns marketing and sales. And you and I were talking just before we hit the record button, and we're talking about how companies want to do thought leadership. And here's why. Because in this day and age where the B2B buyer is doing more and more, they want to do a self-driven buying process. They're doing more and more research before they ever even want to talk to us. So our goal then has to be, how do we get earlier in the buyer's journey? How do we create those conversations? You're not going to do that by talking about your product. That's down the road. You're going to do that by helping educate them. You're going to do that by being this expert, this trusted advisor status that we know we have to be. So that's why thought leadership is so important. But over 70% of B2B buyers say, the thought leadership they read doesn't have any value in it. So that's difficult, right? That's a challenge for us. How do we take that challenge on?
You're making excellent points when you're talking about customer-centric process and understanding your buyers. Of course, internally getting that braver in the seat at the table and being super numbers driven and revenue driven helps. But what gives you authority, to your point, on the market and gives your company ultimately the authority on the market to dictate, this is the trend. This is the innovation for you because we know what your needs are, comes from understanding your buyers and their journey in buying the software that you're providing. So one of the things that I embarked on as soon as I came to Vantaca is unpacking the buyer's journey and understanding how not just build our internal sales process, which a lot of people start getting into the weeds in, and what are we calling the stage number 1, stage number 2 of our pipeline creation, and 3 and 4 and 5, and elevating that a step up and saying, do our buyers know how to buy software in this space? Or what are their needs when they are trying to find a solution to do the business better? Where do they shop? What are their go-to resources and watering holes, so to speak, to consume that content? How do they want to consume that content? What do they find legitimate? Is it what other companies produce? Is it peer-to-peer? Is it word of mouth? Are they conferences? All of that is part of the buyer's journey, and all of those things and insights and pieces, maybe not in the most straightforward and traditional way, like an ebook or a webinar, but they're all touch points around some sort of content production and content creation that you can use in your buyer's journey. As an example, our buyer or other buyers in other industry that I've seen, not necessarily in Vantaca, it might not necessarily be true about Vantaca, but I worked with a client where they didn't necessarily have a process. We had to be the ones who were leading them on the journey of here's what's important. Here's what you should know around your business and this industry. Here's how you can incrementally and then long-term impact this business. Here's some of the resources. Here's some of the people that you can talk to and ask how they did it. So being that a partner and that resource is important, for example, in this business model, and implementing that through your sales process and then adjusting your sales process to that is important. And then producing relevant content and touch points that would nudge them along that journey and educate them in the right way to ultimately pick up a phone, give you a call, and then see the value a little bit more clearly without much selling or traditional sales motion. So definitely having that awareness around your buyers' needs and how they operate, how they consume content, what do they find legitimate and what do they find credible is important before you start producing and cranking out content, to your point, 70% of which nobody cares about.
And one thing you said in there, I really want to highlight because it was all really important, but you talked about being a partner. And there's not one company, is not one B2B company alive that wants to be a vendor, right? We want to be a partner, right? SaaS companies, we don't want to be this platform vendor data provider, right? We want to be a partner that helps them succeed in their business. And that could extend beyond the core functionality or features or benefits that we provide, but it's that how do you succeed in this industry is what you said, right? That's that educational component that people don't want to be sold to, right? They want to be advised. They want to be helped. They want to be more successful after having a relationship with you, right? That's that trusted advisor status. I'm going to ask you a question here. In all fairness, I didn't ask this before, right? But that trusted advisor status, that partnership, a tremendous amount of that comes from the content that you produce on an ongoing basis, right? And that's that thought leadership content we're talking about here. If you're just on a scale of 1 to 10, how important is thought leadership from your point of view as a B2B company to market the business in a way that positions you as a partner, right? Positions you for success in that sales process. You talk about alignment between marketing and sales, right? How important is the development of thought leadership content? 1, it's not important at all. 10, it's vital to our success. Where would you put it on that scale and why?
I'm yet to find a business, potential client, or just from talking to peers about their situations and engagements that doesn't see that as vital as their entire success model in going to market. So it's consistently a 10 in my book. And here's why. It's not just marketing that should be getting out that content to the public. And again, it can come in any shapes of forms. You don't have to, again, pigeonhole yourself in running webinars every other week or producing ebooks. We've moved on as an industry from that, I feel like already. And of course, there are different flavors for different types of businesses, but it's such a team sport that understanding the importance of positioning your company as a partner of excellence and an industry innovator. How can you go wrong with that? There's no downside of that. It can only improve your sales process. It can only warm up your lead. It can only create more brand reputation for you. It can only close more deals when used appropriately, using the buyer's journey aligned with your sales journey, or vice versa, using the sales journey aligned with your buyer's journey. And why I'm saying it's such an important part of being a team sport in your organization is because I'm a huge fan of training your sales force, your sales team, not to only use the content appropriately, and that already validates them as points of authority and knowledge in the industry, but also elevate them to the point of participating in production of that content. Maybe they're not the expert, but you can pair them up with an expert where that elevates them in the industry and they become more knowledgeable and more respected. And that also accelerates their sales process and the journey to close one opportunity, right? Maybe not everybody on the team and the organization will be that expert, and that's not the end goal, but they'll know who you need to be connected to, right? There's always that value point where I know exactly who you need to talk to. And it's not by being an internal employee, it might be another industry expert or your customer that is willing to talk to them, right? All of that is packaged into thought leadership, which is content at the end of the day, right? So I yet to meet a business and get to know a business who wouldn't see that productive.
Keep saying things that I'm begging to ask for more on. And one of the things that you said in there was that it helps position you as an innovator. And I remember, I think I read it in a Forbes article, they talked about how as a company, you've got to have a unique point of view, right? You can't be saying the same thing that everybody else is saying. And that point of view has to have a healthy dose of controversy. It has to raise the eyebrow a little bit. It has to spark some curiosity, has to spark the idea that, like, hey, I want to have a conversation with these people. And so this idea of thought leadership in this content, it has to be evolving where these people are, your buyers are, and what they think they can accomplish, how they think they can tackle the problems, what they think are the available solutions. And it reframes that conversation in a wonderful way. And when you do that, then that's amazing alignment with sales, right? Because they always we're looking for ways to say, there's maybe a different way to tackle this, different way to approach this. You talked a little bit about these are all the kind of things that are thought leadership. Tell us a little bit more about the activities that feed into thought leadership and how they align with this buyer's journey, because there is content that absolutely helps move them along, right? How do you think about that? How do you think about those activities, that content, and aligning it with the appropriate stages inside the buyer's journey?
Excellent question. And I totally agree about the producing of the point you just made about producing content that needs to have innovation in mind, that builds that trust with your end user and customer who's reading it or consuming the content. I called it a reality check. Like, all your content that you produce needs to have a reality check for your audience. It's not just, oh, everything is great and buy our software, or everything is so awful, and if you don't buy our software, here's what's going to happen. It doesn't have to have that. It just needs to have a healthy dose of just reality and truth and authenticity. And the only way you would know how to do that if you really know your customer and their industry. So bringing as many experts as humanly possible into production of that thought leadership, that content, those events, those webinars, those training courses, all of that is deemed content and thought leadership in my book. Once you have that, understand again, what do they find productive in that journey? I don't think they would want to read, at least in my case right now, nobody wants to read any ebooks anymore unless they're like super deep in their buyer's journey and you're giving them not an ebook, but a executive business case for change. Here's how to position this internally. Here's how you should navigate this adoption of technology internally because you need to get this buy-in, right? That's one thing that can have multiple pages and be in depth and be super technical. But in other stages of your buyer's journey and your sales process, a lot of times could be peer-to-peer interaction. And if they don't want to hear from the vendor, even if they know they're the industry expert and the innovator, then embrace that. Don't shy away from that. Don't say, oh, it's so hard. We'll just keep doing what we're doing and hopefully we'll break into them. Then give them a place like a community, whether it's in person or it's digital or it's a peer interaction group of some sort. Maybe it's a small round table that you host every couple of weeks, every couple of months, every couple of quarters, like whatever that is. Give them that opportunity to learn from those peers and validate what you're trying to do from others. So again, it always goes back to understanding exactly what their needs are and how they want to buy and therefore consume the content around it, right? So I feel like a lot of people overlook the importance of peer-to-peer engagement, embracing that, and education, like true education, like no strings attached, like here's what the market is dealing right now, how we're going to do this, how you can do this better, here's how others did it differently and maybe better, not necessarily using or not using our software. Like giving that reality check and providing guidance of some sort and authority in a way that we can help you figure this out together. And why we care is because we take these insights and then we build something in our product and innovate better. Maybe you'll buy it one day, great. But if you need that validation before you jump in and start your sales process, then embrace it, then do it. Because yes, it might seem as a long game, but there are plenty of not so long game activities you can also engage yourselves in and therefore accelerate your sales process and buyer's journey. But do respect and do embrace those hard moments of building trust and earning that trust from your audience.
You've done it 3 times now. You've given me I'm bated breath waiting to ask more on something because you talk about P2P engagement and peer-to-peer engagement. And from my learning and talking to 70 plus CMOs just this year on this podcast, the best performing content is the content where your customers or the peers of your customers are leading the voice of the company. Because when a company says something and it has that healthy dose of controversy and it's got a unique point of view on it, it does raise the eyebrow. You're like, and the prospect is going to say, wow, that's really interesting. And it takes our curiosity to hear. If their peers are also validating that point of view, that unique point that you're making in educating on, it goes from here to here, right? Because in the end, as the company, we are the sellers. What we say is going to have a healthy dose of scrutiny that's attached to it. So they need, you said, validation in there, right? Authenticity, right? That all comes from the voice of their peer community, the people that are out there that are struggling with the same problems, doing the same things, trying to accomplish the same things that they are every single day. So I love this idea of peer-to-peer engagement and making that a part of the education, the content, the thought leadership that you're creating. So that leads me to the question here, and that is, what's the best way to do that, right? I'm totally bought in this P2P, that voice, bringing that into your content, because it can sometimes be a hard process. Put together these webinars or events and different things. Like, what's some of the best ways that you found to bring that peer-to-peer voice into the content, into the voice of the company?
It's probably the hardest endeavor for content teams is figuring out that scalable way of doing that. And for every business, it's going to look some slightly different. If you are lucky enough as a business to have a vocal and happy customer base, that should be pretty straightforward. Engage with your product advisory council, your MVPs, and see what else can they do? What else can you commit them to doing to advance the industry? And your positioning that is, you're not selling our software for us. You're advancing the industry, like make them feel special, right? Can we put you to go and speak at this conference? Can you please be a speaker and be interviewed by our CEO about some of the success story that you've seen or about where the industry, the trends in the industry and this economic situation that we're all dealing with right now? Like what's your take on things doing that with like your roster of best and most devoted and vocal customers that you can trust is a great start. The way you scale it is that others would want to follow. If you elevate it enough and you embrace it enough and you reward them enough with enough publicity and really helping them position themselves as innovators as well, and not necessarily just because they're using your tools, but because they're generally cool industry experts that everybody should be listening to. We picked you for a reason. Then embrace the other ones that come through that door, offer that opportunity and scale it in a way that it comes through, of course, the case studies and customer success stories and the quotes and the stats and measure their success. Invite them to roundtable events if you're hosting them across the country. Identify those, invite them to speak at conferences that you're not attending to. Save some money. Just send them. Who are you using? I use XYZ. So there are ways to do that seem to be expensive, but you really don't have to make it super expensive. And they seem to be not scalable. But once you have the roster of people that you engage with on a regular basis and you really elevate them, more people will come. If they're not coming, then you're doing something wrong there. You're only taking, you're not giving enough. So give enough for the rest of them to come. And that's the only way you can then organize a peer-to-peer interaction group that lives online, for example. That's fine. That's when you can trust some of these amazing MVPs to organize their own meetup and happy hour and talk about stuff. And maybe you sponsor it and you send one person there. It becomes easier. It becomes more organic because it should be organic. It shouldn't be forced.
I feel like we could talk forever because this is so important. And I've been writing notes down as you've been talking here. If there was one thing that you wanted everybody to remember from the whole conversation we've had here, everything that we've talked about, if there was one main takeaway, what would that be?
The thought leadership is a team sport. Like we talked about being the 10 of importance out of 1 to 10 scale, right? If it's really a 10, if you sit down as an executive team, you look back at what you're doing and you're saying, yes, we should do that. That is really important. Make it a team sport. Make everyone participate in thought leadership. Make everybody buy in into thought leadership, whether it's creation, execution, networking, engaging your customers, elevate people in your buyer's journey and sales process, sales team, obviously, to be the thought leaders. If there can't be, so they know ones to go to. So again, like the more people you rally around this initiative, the more successful it will be.
I love it. If folks had more questions for you, because you provoked a lot of thought in the conversation here about thought leadership, would giving maybe a link to your profile on LinkedIn, would that be a good way to get a hold of you?
Yeah, absolutely. LinkedIn or find me on playbooklab.com.
Fantastic. Marina, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights. And it gives us a lot of motivation, right? For what we know we need to be doing more. How do we do it? How do we scale it? Right? And how do we make it a team sport? That's a fantastic recommendation. Thank you very much for coming on today.
Thank you for the opportunity. I really enjoyed it and looking forward for more.